Welcome to NarrativeNook audio tales where enchanted stories come to life. If you enjoy our stories, please subscribe, like and share to support our channel. Enjoy listening. The children got more fearful when they heard Estella calling Roxanne a mommy. On top of that, the latter did not show any rejection. This lady must have seen how we bullied Essie just now. Roxanne patted Estella's head before lowering her gaze to glance at the surrounding children. He apologized to Essie. Her fierce expression made them hang their heads low in guilt. However, the girl who attacked Essie summoned her courage and feigned innocence. It's not like that. It was Essie who pushed me first. That's why." Hearing the little girl lying straight in her face only brought Roxanne's anger to a new height. Why would Essie push you out of nowhere?" When she finished, she suddenly remembered something and reached out to hold Estella's hand. The moment Roxanne saw the red mark on Estella's hand, her anger spiked even more. Did Essie do this to herself, too? The children exchanged glances, for they never expected Roxanne to have witnessed them stepping on Estella's hand. Now that her actions had been exposed, the girl who attacked Estella flew into a rage out of humiliation. That's her fault for not talking to us. She was the one who ignored us first." Roxanne had thought of letting the children off the hook. They were, after all, just children. However, when she saw the children had no intentions of apologizing and even put the blame on Estella, she slightly regretted not bringing Archie and Benny along with her. If I had brought them along, they would have taught these kids a good lesson. Well, looks like I have no choice but to bully the weak. Glaring at the children who showed no remorse, Roxanne fumed. Just because Essie doesn't talk to you doesn't mean you can bully her. Are you going to attack me to make yourselves feel better now that I'm criticizing you like this? And does that mean I can bully you since you talked back to me?" Roxanne's words shocked the girl, and she took a step back timidly. "You're an adult. Adults can't bully the weak? What gives you the right to gang up on others, then? Is that what your parents taught you?" Roxanne cut the girl off expressionlessly. She caressed Estella's head and asked in a gentler tone, Essie, how did they bully you just now?" Knowing she was standing up for her, Estella wrapped her arms around Roxanne's neck and said, They said mommy doesn't want me. They called me little mute and even stepped on my hand." As soon as Roxanne heard that, her temper flared and the surrounding air grew colder. When Estella finished recounting the incident, Roxanne's gaze drifted to the children again. Meeting her eyes, the children tensed up, and fear flooded their hearts. After placing Estella aside, Roxanne stepped forward to the children who bullied Estella earlier. Miss." The children sounded frightened. Just as those words left their mouths, Roxanne shoved them to the ground. Although she exerted little strength, it was enough to teach them a lesson. That's how you bullied Essie earlier. I'll give you another chance. Are you going to apologize to Essie?" She articulated each word clearly. Roxanne was very close to the children as she spoke, and her tone was laced with oppression. The children had been pampered since they were little and had never been threatened like that. They were frightened out of their wits when Roxanne shoved them to the ground unreasonably and looked as if she planned to continue teaching them a lesson. "We'll apologize." A girl spoke up first, sounding as if she was on the verge of tears. Immediately after that, the sound of the children apologizing filled the air. Only then did Roxanne sigh helplessly and carry Estella into her arms again. Never did Roxanne expect such spitefulness from a group of children, let alone see them gang up to bully the weak. Meanwhile, Pamela, who had just finished comforting the crying child, got to her feet, only to find the other side in total chaos. What's going on? Miss, who are you? Parents aren't allowed to enter during class." Pamela walked over in annoyance and stood between Roxanne and the children. The moment Pamela noticed Estella was in Roxanne's arms, her heart sank. After all, Estella was like a princess in the class who could never be bullied. Yet, she was currently being carried by a stranger. I can't bear the consequences if something happens. Please put the child down. I'm the teacher of this class. You can talk to me if something's the matter. Pamela gave Roxanne a cautious glance. Roxanne frowned, feeling a little displeased with Pamela. Estella was bullied so terribly, yet this teacher didn't notice anything. She's only here now to show her concern. Sensing Roxanne's dissatisfaction and extraordinary temperament, Pamela felt as if she had accidentally offended a mighty being. She said carefully, "Are you Essie's relative?" Hearing that, Roxanne froze and glanced at Estella, who was in her arms. Estella was shocked by Roxanne's fierceness earlier and had not recovered from it. She hugged Roxanne's arm and said nothing. Seeing that, Roxanne shifted her gaze to the children in front of her again. Earlier, she had given a tacit confirmation that she was Estella's mother. It was inappropriate for her to deny it now. At that thought, Roxanne decided to continue with the act. I'm Essie's mother." A suspicious look crept onto Pamela's face when she heard those words. Even so, Roxanne did not give Pamela the chance to voice her doubts in front of the children. She said, "I'd like to talk to you about what happened just now. Let's talk outside." Pamela hesitated for a few seconds, but she still agreed and asked the teaching assistant to watch over the children before exiting the classroom with Roxanne. "Essie doesn't have a mother, so who exactly are you?" Pamela knew Roxanne was lying. She was on high alert. Miss Pearson has always been the one dropping Essie off, and she's Essie's future stepmother. Who on earth are you? Roxanne never expected Pamela to know so much, so she had no idea what to say in response. Her silence only made Pamela more suspicious. Pamela subconsciously eyed Estella, who was in Roxanne's arms, only to find the girl looking pale and on the verge of tears from the shock she had experienced earlier. Not daring to delay the situation anymore, Pamela warned, "I'm going to call the police if you don't explain yourself." She took out her phone, about to make the call. Roxanne knitted her brows and steeled herself to say, "I'm Essie's aunt." Pamela immediately stopped what she was doing and scrutinized Roxanne. Now that Pamela had taken a good look at Roxanne, she realized there were indeed some similarities between Estella and her. Despite that, she still chose to be careful and confirm with Estella. "Essie, is she your aunt?" Estella only wrapped her arms around Roxanne's neck with her back facing Pamela. Not a single word came from her mouth. Roxanne had no choice but to pat the girl's head to attract her attention. "Essie, your teacher's talking to you." Only when Estella heard Roxanne's voice did she slowly turn around. Flashing Estella a smile, Pamela repeated her question. To their horror, Estella pursed her lips and shook her head, clearly looking upset. Both Roxanne and Pamela were stunned by Estella's response. Roxanne knew Estella was mad because she had denied being her mother. However, she could not explain the situation to Pamela either. Pamela thought that Roxanne, the woman who claimed to have a different identity, was extremely suspicious. She picked up her phone again with a wary look written all over her face. Seeing that, Roxanne quickly said, I can explain this. Please believe me. If I'm a bad person, why would Essie be staying in my arms so obediently?" Again, doubts filled Pamela's mind when she heard that. True. Essie's really quiet in this woman's arms. Estella had been rejecting the teacher's touch. The same applied to Aubrey too. Estella would do everything she could to avoid her. Pamela could not help but wonder what kind of relationship Roxanne had with Essie that made the latter behave so obediently. Pamela's confusion was clearly written on her face. "Miss, even if I believe you're not a bad person, the fact that you made the children in this class cry remains. This isn't a small matter. You need to at least give me an explanation. That way, I can answer their parents when they ask me about it." Roxanne glanced through the window and saw the children she frightened earlier crying while the teaching assistant was busy trying to calm everyone down. She turned around and smiled at Pamela apologetically. "I'm really Essie's aunt. I can give her father a call if you don't believe me. Roxanne never wanted to get Lucian involved in the first place, but all the children there were from rich families. If their parents decided to take out their anger on her, only the Farwell family would have the power to make them give in. Moreover, Roxanne had only made them cry only because she was protecting Estella. What Roxanne did not expect was that Pamela actually wanted her to make that call. As a teacher, I have to be responsible for the children. So, Pamela's intention was clear enough. That made Roxanne choke a little. She stared at Pamela for some time before taking out her phone reluctantly. Never in her wildest dreams did she imagine having to make the call now without having any time to prepare herself. After all, she had given up on the notion after much hesitation last night. Most importantly, she was secretly there to check on Estella. Roxanne gripped her phone, her heart pounding with nervousness. Pamela grew more suspicious the longer she waited. Given no choice, Roxanne could only pluck up her courage and dial Lucian's number. To her surprise, the call was declined after the second ring. Roxanne glanced at Pamela when the automated message sounded. Please put Essie down. I'll get the security guards to handle this." Pamela's barely existent trust for Roxanne had shattered. Roxanne felt utterly helpless. She knew Lucian was mad at her, but she never expected him to reject her call. Upon hearing Pamela's words, Roxanne had no choice but to put Estella down resignedly. After she put her down, Estella hurriedly clung to her leg, unwilling to let go no matter what anyone said. Essie, come here." Pamela crouched down and opened her arms. However, Estella kept her eyes fixed on Roxanne as if she had heard nothing. The entire situation left Pamela in an awkward position. At the same time, she began to wonder what Roxanne's relationship with Estella was. Seeing that, Roxanne patted Estella's head. Be a good girl and go to your teacher, Essie." Estella shook her head fervently and showed Roxanne her injured hand again. She whined, My hand. It hurts." Roxanne's heart ached when she saw the red mark on the back of Estella's hand. She stroked it gently and said to Pamela, Please help Essie to apply some medication later. Her hand was stepped on earlier." Of course, Pamela was unaware of that incident. When she heard Roxanne's words, she quickly approached to examine Essie's hand. The second she saw the mark on the back of Estella's hand, her heart sank. Essie, what happened? Who bullied you?" Pamela was horrified. After all, she, as a teacher, had absolutely no idea the daughter of Farwell Group had been injured in her class. Still, Estella pursed her lips and said nothing. Seeing that, Roxanne had no choice but to explain, It's the children from just now. I've already taught them a lesson, but please look after Essie more in the future. At the very least, don't let her get bullied. She's not very sociable." Pamela nodded vigorously, feeling more certain that the woman in front of her had some sort of relationship with Estella. Regardless, because of Roxanne's ever-changing answer, Pamela decided to ask Estella, Essie, can you tell me who this lady is to you?" Worried Estella might ignore her like how she did earlier, Pamela added, If you don't tell me, I have no choice but to get the police." Sure enough, the idea of getting the police triggered a response from Estella. Mommy." Pamela felt as if she was about to break into a cold sweat. One moment, the lady claims to be her mommy. In the next, she's her aunt. And now, Essie's telling me the lady's her mommy. After some time, Pamela got to her feet abruptly and took out her phone again. Thinking Pamela was going to make a police report, Roxanne did not stop her. After all, she knew her identity was suspicious, and she had no proof to confirm it. The call finally connected after some time. However, the words that came out of Pamela's mouth were, Mr. Farwell." Upon hearing that, Roxanne froze to the spot. She was already mentally unprepared when she had to call Lucian earlier. And now Pamela had directly given Lucian a call without a word of warning. Furthermore, Roxanne never expected Lucian to answer it so quickly. "He hung up on me just now. Lucian said something into the phone, to which Pamela explained, a lady suddenly came to the kindergarten looking for Essie, and Essie seems to be close to her. The problem is that this lady claimed to be Essie's mother at first and aunt the next. I couldn't confirm her real identity, so I'm calling you to get your verification. Cold sweat trickled down Roxanne's back when she heard Pamela even recounting the incident where she had claimed to be Estella's mother. May I know your last name? Pamela suddenly looked at her. Jarvis, Roxanne replied in a hoarse voice. Once Pamela heard the answer, she breathed a sigh of relief and hurriedly notified Lucian that I've never heard of the Farwell family having any relationship with a family with the surname Jarvis. Thus, this woman will certainly not be any relative of Essie. Luckily, I call Mr. Farwell in time to confirm it. However, the person on the other end of the line fell silent after she told him Roxanne's last name. It made her a little worried, and she wondered if she had done anything wrong. Get her to wait. I'm heading over right now. When Pamela was about to apologize, Lucian's deep voice suddenly rang out. She looked at the woman before her in confusion and hastily agreed. Roxanne noticed Pamela's gaze and felt her heart drop. After hanging up the phone, Pamela looked at Roxanne solemnly and said, Mr. Farwell said he'll be here soon. Please leave Estella to me. Lucian's tone on the phone just now somehow made Pamela subconsciously think that Roxanne was an enemy of the Farwell family. Roxanne, however, only heard the first half of Pamela's sentence. She was stunned in place and didn't respond at all. Pamela got a little anxious and reached out to pull Estella over, but the little girl wrapped her arms around Roxanne's legs and refused to let go. Essie, come over here. Your daddy will be here soon. Pamela tried to convince Estella. Miss Jarvis. Estella looked at Roxanne pitifully when Pamela tugged at her. The way Estella addressed Roxanne made Pamela even more distressed. Oh, my. What exactly is the relationship between this woman and Essie? Out of anxiousness, Pamela increased her strength gradually. Only then did Roxanne return to her senses and reach out to hold Pamela's wrist. In a gentle voice, she said, don't worry. I won't do anything to Essie. If you are worried, you may call the security over. Pamela seemed somewhat hesitant upon hearing that. Estella seems to rely on this woman very much. But Mr. Farwell's tone on the phone just now, and this woman's identity is still a mystery. I believe Mr. Farwell didn't tell you to take Essie away from me just now, did he? Roxanne smiled at Pamela helplessly. Pamela withdrew her hands slowly upon hearing that. Indeed, if this woman were dangerous to Essie, Mr. Farwell would have asked me to protect Essie immediately. With that thought in mind, Pamela did nothing more but ask in puzzlement, what exactly is your relationship with Essie? Roxanne flashed her a faint smile. You will know when Mr. Farwell arrives. After all, Pamela only recognized Lucian's statement at that moment. If Lucian refused to admit it, everything Roxanne said would only be a waste of time. It might even deepen Pamela's suspicions in her. Mr. Farwell will take some time to get here. Could you please bring me a medical kit? I want to treat the back of Essie's hand. Roxanne requested. Hearing that, Pamela left to get the medical kit, but it suddenly occurred to her that she still had no idea who the person in front of her was, and she retracted her leg. Roxanne could roughly guess what was on Pamela's mind. Saying nothing, she held Estella's injured hand and rubbed it carefully. 20 minutes later, Lucian's car slowly pulled up in front of the kindergarten. The man's expression remained deadpan as he descended from the car and slammed the door forcefully. Then, he strode toward Estella's classroom with a storm brewing in his eyes. Roxanne Jarvis. What is she doing here in Essie's classroom? Didn't she say she won't interfere with Essie's affairs anymore? Lucian was furious at the thought of the last unpleasant separation and also Pamela's words earlier. Meanwhile, Roxanne followed Pamela to the office and waited for Lucian's arrival. The red mark on Estella's hand didn't go away. Seeing that, Pamela requested someone to send a medical kit over. Holding Estella in her arms, Roxanne applied the medication to the injured area and rubbed it gently for better absorption. In the meantime, Pamela was watching them cautiously at the side. Pin-drop silence ensued in the office. Just then, someone knocked on the door of the office. Several people in the office snapped back to their senses and looked at the door in unison. Pamela went to open the door. Roxanne, on the other hand, tensed up. Her hand rubbing the medication on Estella's injured area also froze. "Mr. Farwell, you're here." Pamela's heart skipped a beat when she saw the person at the door. After greeting him respectfully, she led him inside. Feeling her heart in her throat, Roxanne lowered her head and dared not to look at the door. The office was so quiet that everyone could hear the footsteps clearly. Hearing the sound of footsteps approaching her, Roxanne had no choice but to lift her head and look over. Not far away, Lucian stood there with a sneer and stared at her silently. As their eyes met, Roxanne's ears reddened. She stiffly carried Estella and stood up. "Mr. Farwell." Pamela was dumbfounded by how Roxanne addressed Lucian. She became increasingly puzzled about the relationship between the duo and even forgot to explain the current situation to Lucian. Fortunately, the man had no plan to ask her and only stared intently at the woman opposite him. "Oh, what do you mean by this, Ms. Jarvis? Have you forgotten what you said? Why did you show up at my daughter's kindergarten?" he asked in a mocking tone. Roxanne lowered her gaze and happened to see Estella's injured hand. The scene of Estella being bullied earlier resurfaced in her mind. At that instant, confidence imbued her, and she retorted furiously, "I'm the one who should ask that question, Mr. Farwell. You yourself know that Essie's situation is not suitable for the new environment, yet you still insist on transferring her to another school. Look at what happened to Essie now. Is this how you have been taking care of her all these years, Mr. Farwell?" Her words made Lucian confused. He knitted his brows and looked at the little one in Roxanne's embrace. Estella had one of her hands around Roxanne's neck and let the injured hand hang by her side, revealing the injury. In no time, Lucian spotted the red mark on his girl's hand, and his expression darkened. Essie had injured the same hand when someone bullied her in the previous kindergarten. So what Roxanne is trying to say now is that Essie has been bullied by the others again this time. Realizing that, Lucian shifted his gaze to Pamela and asked coldly, "Hey, what happened?" Pamela didn't expect him to throw such a question at her and panicked. After calming herself down, she answered, "Mr. Farwell, this was what happened. Essie had a conflict with the other children just now. The children are being too impulsive, so..." Pamela had not been paying attention to Estella, and she dared not tell any lies in the face of Lucian's gaze. Thus, halfway through her speech, she turned to cast a pleading look at Roxanne. Roxanne had planned to talk to Lucian about it anyway, so when her eyes met with Pamela's, she continued where Pamela trailed off. The kids crowded around Essie and said something to her. They even stepped on Essie's hand. Essie resisted, but they pushed her down again. I only intervened when I couldn't bear to watch it anymore. Roxanne could somewhat guess what the children had said to Estella, but she did not want to rub salt into the girl's wound. As Roxanne gave Lucian the explanation, Lucian's expression turned colder. At the same time, the more Roxanne said, the angrier she became. She questioned, the intense way the kids bullied Essie means that this has been going on for more than a day or two. Do you really not know anything about this, Mr. Farwell? Why did he put Essie in a school like this? Is it because he has decided to get together with Aubrey and is planning to have another child with her? Is that why he's neglecting her? The thought of that possibility made Roxanne's heart sink, and in her heartache, she tightened her grip around Estella. Lucian did not speak, but he strode toward her. Instinctively, Roxanne wanted to move backward, but the couch was right behind her, and she could not do that. In no time, Lucian was right in front of her. Roxanne tensed. Right as she was about to question him as to what he was trying to do, Lucian reached out to hold Estella's injured hand. After checking Estella's injury, Lucian turned around and fixed his gaze on Pamela again. Is this how your kindergarten looks after the children? Pamela's heart lurched. She had always thought that Estella was not the kind of child to cause trouble, so she never put too much attention to her. She did not expect other children to still be so hostile toward Estella despite her having done nothing to them. Now, trouble had come, and Lucian had found out about it. Pamela could not even summon the courage to defend herself. I'm sorry, Mr. Farwell. This is an oversight on my part. Before she could finish her sentence, Lucian interrupted her. The conflict between Essie and the kids isn't something that happened recently, but you've only found out about it today. If the kindergarten can't even handle the troubles in the children's relationships, I don't see the point in letting my daughter stay here any longer. At that, Pamela panicked. Mr. Farwell, this is genuinely an oversight on my part. I'll take note of this in the future. Please don't put me in a tight spot like this. Then, she gave Roxanne another pleading look. Even though Roxanne was upset about Pamela's negligence, she found Lucian's words absurd. Mr. Farwell, don't you think you should do some self-reflection when you blame the teacher for this? I refuse to believe that Essie acted perfectly normal at home these few days. Did you not notice anything amiss about her at all? She refuted. Pamela never thought that Roxanne would dare to speak to Lucian in a tone like that, so she was astounded. She then belated realized that she was no longer in the spotlight. At that, she let out a relieved sigh under her breath before trying her best to keep a low profile. Indeed, Lucian's attention was caught by Roxanne's words. Yet, there was no explanation he could offer. Aubrey had been the one sending and picking Estella up from the kindergarten lately. In short, he barely came into contact with the teachers. While he did notice Estella's low mood, he thought it was merely because she did not like the new kindergarten. Never in his wildest dream did he expect something like this to happen. The atmosphere in the office turned tense. All of a sudden, someone knocked on the door. Then, the head of the kindergarten entered, chuckling. He then greeted Lucian by saying, Mr. Farwell, why didn't you tell me that you were coming? I would have come to welcome you myself. The moment the head of the kindergarten received news of Lucian's appearance, he rushed over to where Lucian was. The daughter of the Farwell family was currently enrolled in their kindergarten. Therefore, he had to find a way to get Farwell Group to invest in their kindergarten no matter what. That way, their kindergarten would rise in the social ranks of Horrington. The head of the kindergarten came in preparation to curry favor with Lucian, so he was not expecting to be greeted by the confrontation the second he stepped into the office. Almost immediately, he figured out that something must have happened to the Farwell family's daughter. Upon realizing that, the head of the kindergarten's smile froze. What's the matter? Did Pam do something wrong? The head of the kindergarten was swift to come back to his senses, and before Lucian could say anything, he turned and began berating Pamela. What's the matter with you? You only have that many kids in the class, but you still can't take good care of them. Pamela's heart took a dip, and she muttered, Sir, Mr. Leishman's child was crying. Their family has invested a large sum of money into our kindergarten, so how can I just ignore the kid? All I did was checked on that child for a brief moment. I never thought that the kids would bully her. The Leishman family was currently the largest investor in the kindergarten, and the head of the kindergarten had told her to keep a closer eye on the Leishman's son. Hence, a stumped look appeared on the head of the kindergarten's face. Then, he soon realized that even Austin Leishman himself had to bow to Lucian if he were here. After weighing the situation, it went without saying that he had to prioritize Lucian over Austin. Mr. Farwell, I have a clearer picture of what is going on now. You're right. This is our kindergarten's responsibility. The head of the kindergarten immediately apologized. Don't worry. I will definitely make the children who bullied Ms. Estella apologize to her. Also, I'll assign 2 more teachers to Estella's class. That way, Ms. Estella will surely get the best care. You don't need to do that, Roxanne said with a frown. I've already chided the children, and they've already apologized to Essie. Then, turning to Lucian, she stiffly uttered, however, I'll have to trouble you, Mr. Farwell, to not let the parents of those children come after me. She had laid a finger on those children because she was an adult. If their parents were to find out her true identity, they would certainly come after her. Roxanne did not wish to be in more trouble. However, the head of the kindergarten understood it wrongly. He thought that Roxanne was dissatisfied with the way he dealt with the situation and was hinting to him to get those parents to apologize in person. Hence, the head of the kindergarten hesitated. He did not know about Roxanne's relationship with Estella, but the little girl was clearly reliant on Roxanne. Even though Lucian was there, the girl was still staying in her arms. Therefore, the head of the kindergarten assumed that Roxanne was close to the Farwell family. With that, the head of the kindergarten quickly said, they definitely won't be finding trouble with you. I'll notify their parents right away and have them come here to apologize to Mr. Farwell and Ms. Estella in person. Roxanne tensed up as she realized that the head of the kindergarten must have mistaken her words. Subconsciously, she turned to Lucian, hoping that he would say something to clarify the situation. The matter would be blown out of proportion if the parents came over. However, Lucian continued to look at the head of the kindergarten without any expression. He had no intention to reject the latter's suggestion. Seemingly sensing Roxanne's gaze, Lucian turned toward her. Roxanne was stupefied when their eyes met. It took her a few seconds to come back to her senses and signal Lucian to stop the head of the kindergarten. I don't have much time. Tell them to hurry up. It was as if he did not understand the look she gave him. What the hell? The head of the kindergarten was quick to agree to it and promptly went to call the parents. Once the other man was out, Roxanne turned to look at Lucian disapprovingly. You don't need to blow this out of proportion. Those kids might take out their anger on Essie after getting scolded by their parents. The lesson I taught them was more than enough. Lucian's eyes flitted toward the girl in Roxanne's arms before anger seeped into those eyes. Those parents could not educate their children well and let their kids bully Essie, so it is normal for them to have to pay the price for it. The consequences await them will only be more severe if they don't apologize to us today. There was no way he was going to let those parents who allowed their children bully others off so easily. Roxanne parted her lips, but when she recalled that she was just an outsider, she closed her mouth again. What's the matter? Miss Jarvis, you've already bullied those children, but you're unwilling to teach the adults a lesson. Lucian questioned, shooting her a strange look. Their eyes met for a brief second before Roxanne quickly lowered her gaze. That isn't what I mean. This is your family matter, Mr. Farwell. It's best if you make the final decisions yourself. She had only bullied the children because she was enraged, after all. Lucian continued, watching her grimly. Right as he was about to ask her why she was there, the head of the kindergarten suddenly came back inside. I've notified the parents about the matter. They said they'll rush over as quickly as they can. Please wait for them a little while, Mr. Farwell. With that, he curiously turned to Roxanne and cautiously asked, she is? Roxanne instinctively turned to Lucian. Yet, Lucian was looking at her, waiting for her to introduce herself. There was even a look in his eyes that Roxanne could not decipher. Despite his silence, Roxanne managed to understand what he wanted to say to her. The man was asking her what identity she was going to take up after claiming to be Estella's mother earlier. A long silence later, Roxanne squeezed out, I am Essie's aunt. Then, she lowered her head guiltily. If the head of the kindergarten were to confirm her identity with Lucian, she was unsure if Lucian would actually go along with her words. Fortunately, the head of the kindergarten did not ask more questions. He only nodded at her before returning the focus of the conversation to Estella. Is Ms. Estella hurt? I'll get the doctor on duty to take a look at her right now. At that, he took out his phone, about to make the call. Roxanne rejected him. No need. I've already treated her wounds. Hearing that, the head of the kindergarten sighed in relief before thanking Roxanne profusely. Roxanne fell silent after that. The head of the kindergarten wanted to begin buttering Lucian up, but when he noticed the other man's gaze on Estella, he sheepishly clamped his mouth shut. Pin-drop silence ensued in the office. After what seemed like forever, hurried footsteps sounded out in the corridor. Then, a few women dressed to their nines entered the office in a haste. The moment they saw Lucian, they began offering their apologies. "Miss Farwell, I heard that my child has been insensible and injured, Miss Estella. I'm really sorry. We didn't educate our boy well enough. Please don't worry. We'll definitely give him a good round of scolding when we get home." "Yeah, where's the boy? Get him here and have him apologize to Miss Estella sincerely." In no time, only the words of apologies filled the air in the office. After what seemed like an eternity, Lucian finally uttered, I believe kids are not born spiteful. If this happens again, I will take that to mean everyone here holds a grudge against Farwell Group." Although Lucian sounded understanding, his words carried an undertone of threat. Everyone agreed unhesitatingly with Lucian. However, as Lucian remained silent, no one dared to leave. Roxanne spoke suddenly. "Essie is fine now. If there's nothing else, I'm heading back." After she was done speaking, Roxanne wanted to return Estella to Lucian and was prepared to leave. Nonetheless, Estella held on to Roxanne tightly and refused to let go of her. Estella had not seen Roxanne for quite some time, so it was understandable why she was reluctant to leave the woman. Moreover, Estella had spent a great deal of effort in order to bring about the meeting between her father and Roxanne. She definitely would not let the latter go this easily. "Essie." Roxanne felt awkward with Estella holding tightly onto her as the other parents stared at her curiously. Refusing to let go of Roxanne, Estella said stubbornly, "No. I don't want Daddy." Upon hearing Estella's words, everyone exchanged looks. Ahem. Someone realized the awkwardness of the situation and found an excuse to leave the scene. "Mr. Farwell, I will educate my child properly when I return home. I still have a meeting to attend, so I have to get back to work now." Lucian responded with an indifferent hum. Upon seeing this, the rest of the crowd followed suit and left the office. Everybody heaved a sigh of relief when they were out of the office. They did not know how Roxanne was related to the Farwell family, but judging from the situation earlier, Estella had made Lucian look bad. If it were another family in such a situation, perhaps they would have stayed to find out what was going on. However, when it came to Lucian, nobody dared to do so. The office became empty all of a sudden. Roxanne felt something was different but continued to pacify Estella without looking at Lucian. "Essie, be a good girl. I have to get back to work. You should go to your daddy." Estella shook her head forcefully. Lucian felt bitter upon seeing that Roxanne was trying to avoid him again. It was she who said Essie is none of her business anymore. Yet, she was the one who showed up at Essie's kindergarten. She was the one who went back on her own words, but now she's acting as though I forced her to do so. With these thoughts on his mind, Lucian said icily, "Essie, come here. Don't stay in the way of Ms. Jarvis' work." Estella turned a deaf ear to Lucian's words. She pitifully tugged at Roxanne's arm and held up her injured hand. "It hurts." Roxanne's heart ached when she looked at the red marks on Estella's hand, but she really had no idea how to face Lucian if she stayed. After a short while, Roxanne gently blew some air onto Estella's injured hand. All right, I have blown away all the pain now. It won't hurt anymore." Seeing that Estella was still reluctant to let go of her, Roxanne softened her tone further. I really have to get back to work, Essie. You be a good girl in school, and I will visit you in 2 days' time, okay?" After speaking to Estella, Roxanne glanced sheepishly at Lucian. This time around, she had shown up without informing him. She wondered if Lucian would sternly refuse to let her visit again. Thankfully,
Lucian seemed to understand the purpose behind her words and remained silent. Estella looked skeptical. "You won't come back if you leave." Roxanne patted Estella's head and said, "I will come back. Didn't I come here on my own accord this time around? I'm worried about you, so I'll visit you again in 2 days."
Thank you for listening. If you have enjoyed this story, please like and share so others can see it too. Also hit the subscription button and notification bell so you can be notified on our next release. Thank you for your support. God bless you.